Maya's hands trembled as she stared at the painting leaning against her bedroom wall. It wasn't just any painting. It was the last one she had left. The last piece of her heart she could actually hold on to. The canvas showed a winter sunset over the old city park. Golden light poured through bare tree branches, painting everything in shades of orange and pink. She remembered every brushstroke, every moment she'd spent creating it. This wasn't just art to her. It was her grandmother. It was those Sunday afternoons when she was 7 years old, holding a wrinkled hand while they walked through fallen leaves. It was hot chocolate and paper cups and stories about the old country. It was love captured in oil paint. But love doesn't pay rent. Maya picked up her phone and immediately put it back down. 17 missed calls, 12 text messages. She didn't need to read them to know what they said. The landlord wanted his money. The electric company had sent a final notice. Her credit card was maxed out, and the collection agencies were circling like hungry wolves. She walked to her tiny kitchen and opened the refrigerator. Half a carton of eggs, some wilted lettuce, a jar of pickles she'd been rationing for a week. That was it. That was everything she had left in the world. 3 months ago, she'd been behind on 1 month's rent. Then 2. Now it was 3, and Mr. Peterson had stopped being understanding. Last week, he'd slipped an eviction notice under her door. She had 14 days. 14 days to come up with $3,000 or find herself on the street. Maya looked around her studio apartment. Calling it a studio was generous. It was basically one room with a bathroom the size of a closet, but it had big windows. Beautiful natural light. For an artist, that meant everything. She'd created her best work in this cramped little space. Every inch of wall was covered with sketches and color studies. Her easel stood in the corner like an old friend. Paint-splattered sheets covered the floor. This place was her whole world, and she was about to lose it. She turned back to the painting of the park. Her grandmother had been dead for 2 years now. Sometimes Maya still reached for her phone to call her, still wanted to share good news that never came anymore. The art world had moved on without her. Gallery owners said her work was too quiet, too emotional, too personal. Nobody wanted paintings that made them feel something deep anymore. They wanted bold, loud, trendy. Something they could photograph for social media and forget about the next day. Maya had tried to adapt. She really had. She'd painted abstract pieces with bright colors. She'd done modern interpretations of classical themes. She'd even tried her hand at pop art. Though it made her soul ache, nothing worked. Nothing sold, and slowly, piece by piece, she'd sold off her collection just to survive. First went the landscape series she'd done in college. Then the portraits of strangers she'd painted in coffee shops. Then the still life paintings she'd created when she couldn't afford to travel for inspiration. One by one, they'd disappeared. Some to collectors who appreciated them, others to people who just wanted something to cover a blank wall. Now there was only this one left. The grandmother painting. The one she'd promised herself she'd never sell, but promises don't keep the lights on. Maya carefully wrapped the painting in brown paper. She'd done this so many times before that her hands moved automatically. Bubble wrap tape, corners reinforced. She treated it like the precious thing it was, even though she was about to let it go forever. The walk to Chen's gallery took 15 minutes. Normally, she would have enjoyed the morning air, the way sunlight hit the old brownstone buildings, the sound of the city waking up. But today everything felt gray, heavy, like the world was pressing down on her shoulders. Mr. Chen looked up when the bell above his door chimed. He was an older man, probably in his 70s, with kind eyes and paint stains on his fingers. He'd been displaying her work for almost a year now, never charged her commission until something sold, never pressured her, never made her feel like a failure even though she obviously was one. "Maya," he said, and something in his voice told her he already knew why she was there. She couldn't speak. If she tried to talk, she'd cry, and she was so tired of crying. Instead, she just unwrapped the painting and held it up. Mr. Chen set down his newspaper. He stood slowly, his knees creaking, and walked over to examine the piece. He didn't say anything for a long time, just looked at it the way he looked at all art. Really looked at it, saw what was underneath the paint. "Your grandmother's park," he finally said. Maya nodded. "The light is perfect. You can almost feel the cold air." "Thank you," she whispered. "You said you'd never sell this one." I said a lot of things. Mr. Chen sighed. He named a price. It was fair. More than fair, actually. Enough to pay 2 months of back rent and buy groceries for a few weeks. Enough to keep her head above water for a little while longer. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was enough to survive. Maya signed the consignment papers with a shaking hand. Mr. Chen counted out cash from his register and pressed it into her palm. The bills felt heavy, wrong, like she'd just sold a piece of her soul. "I'll give it a good home," Mr. Chen promised. "I'll make sure it goes to someone who understands what it means." Maya nodded again. She didn't trust herself to speak. She just turned and walked out of the gallery, leaving behind the last piece of her grandmother she had left. That evening, the rain started. Maya stood at her window watching water streak down the glass. Somewhere out there, her painting was sitting in Mr. Chen's gallery window, waiting for a stranger to see it, to buy it, to take it home and hang it on their wall without knowing the story behind it. She didn't know that at that exact moment, a man in an expensive coat was standing outside the gallery, looking at her painting, standing so still in the rain that Mr. Chen noticed him through the window. She didn't know that her life was about to change. All she knew was that she'd survived another day, and sometimes that was enough. Maya was staring at her instant coffee when her phone rang. The cheap kind that came in a giant plastic container and tasted like burnt dirt. She'd been rationing it for weeks, measuring out exactly 3 spoonfuls each morning to make it last. The number on her screen was Chen's gallery. Her heart jumped. Maybe there was a problem with the payment. Maybe he'd changed his mind about the price. Maybe someone had damaged the painting overnight. Her brain immediately went to the worst possible scenarios because that's what happens when you've been drowning for so long. "Hello?" Her voice came out rough. She hadn't really talked to anyone in days. "Maya, it's Chen." He sounded different, excited. She'd never heard him excited before. "Your painting sold," she blinked. "What? This morning?" A man came in the moment I opened the door. He'd been waiting outside. Paid full price. Didn't even try to negotiate. Maya sat down hard on her second-hand chair. The painting had been in the gallery for less than 24 hours. Nothing she'd created had ever sold that fast. Nothing had sold at all in almost 6 months. That's incredible," she managed to say. "There's more?" Chen paused. "He wants to meet you." The buyer. He asked specifically if he could speak with the artist. Now Maya's stomach twisted. "Meet me, why?" He didn't say, but he seemed very interested in your work. "He'll be back at 3 o'clock this afternoon. I told him I'd call you first, see if you were comfortable with it." Maya looked down at herself. She was wearing sweatpants with paint stains and a t-shirt she'd slept in for 2 nights. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. She hadn't put on real clothes or makeup and she couldn't remember how long. "I don't know, Mr. Chen, I'm not really—" "Maya." His voice was gentle but firm. When someone wants to meet the artist, it usually means they want to buy more work. This could be important. More work. The words echoed in her head. She didn't have more work. She'd sold everything. Her studio was full of half-finished pieces and abandoned ideas, but nothing complete. Nothing good enough to show anyone. But maybe she could pull something together. Maybe this was the break she'd been praying for. "Okay," she said. 3 o'clock. I'll be there." The next 2 hours were chaos. Maya tore through her closet looking for something presentable. She found a black dress that wasn't too wrinkled and a cardigan that covered the worst of the paint stains on her arms. She washed her hair in the sink because the shower was broken and her landlord hadn't fixed it. She put on the mascara and lipstick she'd been saving for job interviews that never happened. She grabbed her portfolio on the way out, even though Chen said it wasn't necessary. It was old and worn, but it had photos of her best work from before everything fell apart. Maybe it would be enough. Maybe this buyer would see potential instead of desperation. The walk to the gallery felt like it took forever and no time at all. Maya's hands were sweating. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She kept telling herself not to hope too much. Hope was dangerous when you had nothing left to lose. She arrived 15 minutes early. Chen was behind the counter and he gave her an encouraging nod. The gallery was empty except for them. Quiet. The kind of quiet that made every sound feel too loud. At exactly 3 o'clock, the door opened. The man who walked in wasn't what Maya expected. She'd been imagining someone older, rich and retired with too much money, and not enough taste. But this guy was maybe in his mid-30s, tall, wearing an expensive charcoal coat that probably cost more than her rent. Dark hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of calm confidence that came from never having to worry about money. He looked like he belonged in a different world than hers. "You must be Maya," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Daniel Mercer." His handshake was firm but not aggressive. Professional. Maya's artist hands probably felt rough and paint-stained against his smooth palm. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Daniel turned to look at the empty space where her painting had been displayed in the window. "I saw your work yesterday evening. I was on my way to a business meeting. A deal I'd been working on for months. And then I saw that painting and I just stopped." Maya didn't know what to say to that, so she stayed quiet. "I stood there in the rain for 20 minutes, he continued. "I couldn't move. That park, that light. It reminded me of something I thought I'd lost." He turned back to her and there was something raw in his expression, something real. "It reminded me of my family's estate upstate. We had this garden and in winter, the sun would set through the trees exactly like that. My mother used to take me and my sister out there every Sunday. We'd walk for hours, just talking. About nothing, about everything." Maya felt her throat tighten. He got it. This stranger understood what she'd been trying to capture. "I'm sorry," Daniel said quickly. "I'm making this weird. I just wanted you to know that your painting meant something to me. It wasn't just a decoration. It was a memory I didn't know I could get back." "That's what I hoped for," Maya admitted quietly. "When I paint, I try to capture moments that feel like they're slipping away." Daniel nodded slowly. Then he asked the question that would change everything. "Do you have more work like this?" Maya's mind raced. She thought about her empty studio. The unfinished canvases. The abandoned projects and half-formed ideas. She thought about lying. About saying yes just to keep this conversation going. But something about Daniel's honesty made her want to be honest too. "Not right now," she admitted. "I've been struggling. I sold most of my collection just to survive. That painting was the last complete piece I had." She waited for him to make an excuse and leave. Waited for the disappointment to cross his face. Wealthy people didn't want to hear about other people's problems. But Daniel didn't leave. Instead, he asked another question. "Would you be willing to show me your studio? I'd like to see what you're working on, even if it's not finished." Maya hesitated. Her studio was a disaster, a testament to failure. But something in Daniel's eyes told her he wasn't judging. He was genuinely interested. "Okay," she said. "But I'm warning you, it's not much." As they walked out of the gallery together, Maya caught Chen's eye. He smiled and gave her a small nod. Like he knew something she didn't. Like maybe, just maybe, her luck was finally changing. Maya's hand shook as she unlocked her apartment door. 4 flights of stairs had given her plenty of time to regret this decision. What was she thinking, bringing a wealthy stranger to her falling-apart studio? He was going to take one look at this place and realize she was a complete mess. "Sorry about the climb," she said, pushing the door open. "The elevator's been broken for 3 months." "Exercise is good," Daniel replied, but she could hear him breathing a little harder. The door swung open, and Maya felt her face burn with embarrassment. The morning's panic to get ready had left the place even worse than usual. Clothes were scattered across her bed. Coffee cups lined the windowsill. Paint tubes lay scattered across every surface like casualties of war. But Daniel wasn't looking at the mess. He was looking at the walls. He stepped inside slowly, his eyes moving from one canvas to another. Maya watched him, trying to see her work through his eyes. Half-finished portraits leaned against the walls. Color studies were tacked up with pushpins. Sketches covered every available surface. "This is incredible," he said quietly. Maya almost laughed. "It's a disaster." "No." Daniel moved closer to a series of small paintings she'd propped on her desk. "This is a working artist's space. This is someone who actually creates instead of just talking about it." He picked up one of the small studies carefully. It showed an old woman's hands folding laundry, afternoon light streaming through a window. Maya had painted it last month after watching her neighbor through the courtyard. Something about those weathered hands, the careful way they smoothed each fold, had struck her as beautiful. "These fragments," Daniel said, gesturing to the collection of small pieces. "They're like stolen moments, things most people would walk right past without noticing." "That's exactly what they are," Maya admitted. "I see something that moves me, and I try to capture it before it disappears. But they're not finished. They're just studies, practice. Daniel set the painting down carefully and turned to face her. Can I tell you something? And please don't think I'm crazy. Maya nodded, though her stomach was doing nervous flips. My mother died 6 months ago. Cancer. It happened fast. Too fast. His voice cracked slightly and he cleared his throat. She left me the family estate. This huge house upstate where I grew up, and I haven't been able to go back, not once. I can't even drive past it without feeling like I'm drowning. Maya stayed quiet. Let him talk. Everyone keeps telling me to sell it, move on, but that house, it's full of her. Full of my dad, too. He died when I was 19, and my little sister moved to Seattle years ago. The house is just sitting there empty, waiting for someone who can't face walking through the door. He looked at Maya with an intensity that made her breath catch. When I saw your painting yesterday, I saw my mother's garden. I saw Sunday mornings and the way light looked through the kitchen window. I saw all these memories I've been trying to bury because they hurt too much. He paused, and I realized something. I don't want to forget. I want to remember. I just don't know how to do it without falling apart. Maya understood that feeling better than he knew. Grief is like that, she said softly. It makes beautiful things painful because they remind us of what we've lost. Exactly. Daniel pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos, and held it out to her. This is the house. Maya looked at the screen. A beautiful old estate with stone walls and tall windows, gardens stretching out in every direction. The kind of place that should be in magazines. It's beautiful, she said. It's empty, Daniel corrected, and I have a proposition for you. It might sound strange, but hear me out. Maya's heart started pounding again. I want to commission you to paint that house. Not the building itself, but the memories, the moments that made it a home. He spoke faster now, like he was afraid she'd say no before he finished. My mother baking in the kitchen, my dad reading in his study, my sister and me playing in the garden. All the ordinary moments that felt meaningless until they were gone. Maya stared at him. That's a huge project, I know. That's why I'm prepared to pay you a monthly stipend. Enough to cover your rent, your supplies, and your living expenses. For 6 months. You work on the paintings and I'll provide everything you need. Photos, stories, objects from the house. Whatever helps you understand what it was like. 6 months. Rent paid. Money for food and art supplies. No more panic. No more collection calls. No more choosing between eating and creating. It sounded too good to be true. And Maya had learned that things that sounded too good to be true usually were. Why me? She asked. You could hire any artist. Someone established. Someone with a gallery and a reputation. Daniel looked around her studio again, at the half-finished paintings and scattered supplies. At the evidence of someone who created art because they had to, not because it was profitable. Because established artists have forgotten how to feel things. He said simply, they paint what sells. What's trendy? What looks good in a rich person's house? But you paint truth. You paint the things that matter even when nobody's buying them. Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes. She'd been rejected so many times. Told her work was too emotional, too quiet, too personal. And here was someone offering her money specifically because of those qualities. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Painting someone else's memories. What if I get it wrong? What if I can't capture what you're looking for? Daniel smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. Maya, you painted a park that made a stranger stand in the rain and remember his mother. You already know how to do this. You've been doing it your whole life. He pulled out a business card and set it on her desk. Think about it. Take a few days. But I really hope you'll say yes. I think we could help each other. After he left, Maya sat on her bed holding his card. Daniel Mercer. A phone number and an email address. And underneath, written in pen, sometimes the things we create to survive become the things that save us. She looked around her studio. At the eviction notice still pinned to her wall. At the empty refrigerator and the paint supplies she couldn't afford to replace. At all the evidence of her failure. Then she looked at her paintings. At the moments she'd captured because they mattered to her. Because they were beautiful and true and worth remembering. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe she'd been saving herself all along without realizing it. She picked up her phone and started typing a message. Yes, let's do this. The first payment hit Maya's account 3 days later. She stared at her phone screen, refreshing her banking app over and over because surely this was a mistake. Surely someone would realize they'd sent money to the wrong person and take it all back. But it stayed there. Real money. Enough to pay Mr. Peterson everything she owed, buy groceries that weren't instant noodles, and replace her paint supplies. She sat on her floor and cried for 20 minutes straight. Relief crying. The kind that comes after holding your breath underwater for too long. The next day, Daniel showed up at her studio with 3 cardboard boxes. "I brought you some things," he said, setting them down carefully. "Photos mostly. Some objects. I thought they might help." Maya opened the first box and found herself looking into someone else's life. Family photos in old frames. A woman with kind eyes and graying hair standing in a garden. A man in glasses sitting in a leather chair surrounded by books. 2 kids building a snowman, their faces red from cold and laughter. "That's my mom," Daniel said, pointing to the woman in the garden. She loved roses. Spent every summer morning out there with her coffee, just walking among the flowers. Maya picked up the photo carefully. The woman's smile was genuine. Not posed, just pure happiness captured in a moment. And that's my dad in his study. He was a professor. Literature. That room was his sanctuary. He'd spend hours in there, reading and making notes in the margins of books. Daniel's voice got softer. I used to sneak in and steal books from his shelves. He always knew, but he never said anything. Just left them out where I could reach them. Over the next weeks, Maya learned to paint people she'd never met. Daniel came by twice a week, always bringing something new. A wool blanket his mother had crocheted. His father's reading glasses with tape on one side, because he'd never bothered to fix them properly. A chipped teacup from Sunday breakfasts, but more than objects. He brought stories. He told her about the time his sister fell out of a tree and broke her arm, and their mother stayed calm the whole drive to the hospital even though she was terrified. About his father teaching him to drive on the long driveway, patient even when Daniel scraped the side of the garage. About holiday dinners that lasted until midnight because nobody wanted the day to end. Maya painted through the nights. Sleep felt less important than capturing these moments while they were fresh in her mind. She painted Daniel's mother at the kitchen window, morning light catching in her silver hair as she watched birds at the feeder. She painted his father in that leather chair, surrounded by towers of books, reading glasses sliding down his nose. She painted the sister as a teenager, all awkward limbs and bright eyes, teaching her little brother to ride a bike. She painted family dinners where you could almost hear the laughter. Christmas mornings with wrapping paper scattered everywhere. Ordinary moments that felt extraordinary because they were real. Sometimes Daniel would sit quietly and watch her work. He never interrupted, never criticized, just observed as she brought his memories to life with brushstrokes and color. "How do you do that?" he asked one evening. Maya was working on a painting of his mother in the garden surrounded by roses. "Do what?" "Make it feel like I'm there again. Like I can smell the flowers and hear her humming. You never met her, but somehow you understand her." Maya stepped back from the canvas, brush still in hand. "I paint what you tell me, but I also paint what I feel. Your stories aren't just facts. They're full of love and loss and all the complicated things that make us human. I just try to translate that into something visual." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "I haven't been able to talk about them like this. My mom, my dad, everyone in my life wants me to move on. Stop dwelling. Get back to normal." He laughed bitterly. "Like there's a normal to get back to." "Grief doesn't work on a schedule," Maya said. She cleaned her brush, buying time to find the right words. "My grandmother raised me after my parents died. Car accident when I was 6. She was everything to me. When she died 2 years ago, people kept telling me I should be over it by now. Like there's an expiration date on missing someone." "I didn't know," Daniel said softly. "That park I painted. The one you bought. We went there every Sunday for 12 years. Rain or snow or blazing heat, we'd walk those paths. She'd tell me stories about her childhood, about my parents when they were young, about life and art and what matters." Maya's throat tightened. Painting that park was the only way I could keep her with me. Make sure I didn't forget a single detail. They sat in silence, 2 people who understood that some losses never stop hurting. They just become part of who you are. As the 6th month approached, Maya's studio had transformed. Canvases covered every wall, each one a window into Daniel's family life. His mother baking cookies, flour dusting her apron. His father laughing at something on TV, glasses askew. The 4 of them around the dinner table, captured in a moment of perfect togetherness. The final painting took her 3 weeks. It was the hardest one because it had to contain everything. The whole family gathered around that dinner table. but painted in a way that showed not just what they looked like, but who they were, the love between them, the comfort of belonging. When it was finished, Daniel stood in front of it for so long that Maya started to worry. Had she gotten it wrong? Had she missed something essential? Had she failed to capture what he needed? Finally, he spoke, and his voice was rough with emotion. "This is them. This is really them." "I'm glad," Maya said, relief flooding through her. "I need to tell you something." Daniel turned to face her, and she saw tears on his cheeks. "When I commissioned these paintings, I thought I wanted them so I could remember, so I could hold on to what I'd lost." He gestured at the paintings surrounding them. "But that's not what happened. These didn't just help me remember. They helped me heal. I've been avoiding that house for 6 months because walking through it felt like drowning in everything I'd lost. But now," he smiled through his tears, "now I think I can go back. Not to torture myself with memories, but to honor them. To live in that house again and let it be a home instead of a tomb." Maya felt her own eyes burning. "That's the best thing anyone's ever said about my work." "There's more," Daniel continued. "I want to turn the house into a private gallery. Display these paintings in the rooms where the memories happened. Open it to the public a few times a year. Let people see that grief can transform into something beautiful. That remembering doesn't have to mean drowning." He pulled out a folder. "And I want you to be part of it. Not just as the artist, but as a partner. These paintings are going to get attention. I've already had calls from gallery owners who heard what I was doing. They want to see your work. Feature you in shows." Maya couldn't speak. 6 months ago, she'd sold her last painting just to eat. Now someone was offering her a future. A real future doing what she loved. "I don't know what to say," she finally managed. "Say you'll keep creating," Daniel replied. "Say you'll keep painting these quiet, truthful moments that most people miss. Because the world needs artists who remember that life isn't just about what's loud and trendy. It's about the small things, the real things, the things that matter." Maya looked around at the paintings covering her walls. Her grandmother's granddaughter, Daniel's family, strangers folding laundry and feeding birds, all these captured moments that proved life was worth paying attention to. "Yes," she said, "I'll keep creating." 1 year later, Maya stood in the entrance hall of the Mercer estate and barely recognized her own life. The house had been transformed. Not renovated or modernized, but opened up, breathing again. Each room held her paintings in the exact spots where the memories had happened. Daniel's mother in the kitchen where she'd actually cooked. His father in the study where he'd actually read. The family around the dining table where they'd actually laughed and argued and loved each other. Tonight was the opening. Held Moments, they'd called the exhibition. The name had come to Maya at 3 in the morning, and it felt right. These weren't just paintings. They were moments caught and held before they could disappear completely. People were already arriving. Art critics in expensive clothes. Collectors with sharp eyes and sharper checkbooks. Journalists with cameras and questions. The local news had done a story last week about the mysterious artist who'd painted a family she'd never met. And suddenly everyone wanted to know who Maya was. It felt surreal. Overwhelming. Like she'd stepped into someone else's life by accident. "You okay?" Daniel appeared at her elbow with a glass of water. He knew she didn't drink at events like this. "Needed to stay clear-headed. I'm terrified," Maya admitted. "Good. That means you care." He smiled. "Come on. There's someone I want you to meet." He led her through the growing crowd to a couple examining the painting of his mother in the kitchen. The woman had tears on her cheeks. "This is exactly what it feels like," the woman was saying to her husband. "When I remember Mom. Not just what she looked like, but the feeling of being in that kitchen with her. The safety of it." Daniel cleared his throat gently. "I'm glad it resonates with you." The couple turned, slightly embarrassed to be caught crying at an art show. But Daniel just smiled and introduced Maya. "This is the artist. She's the one who captured all of this." The woman grabbed Maya's hand. "Thank you. My mother died last year, and I've been so afraid I'd forget the details. But this painting reminded me that the details aren't what matter. It's the feeling. The love underneath everything." Maya felt her own throat tighten. That's exactly what I hoped people would feel. As the evening went on, she heard similar stories over and over. People who'd lost parents, siblings, children. People who carried grief like a weight and didn't know how to set it down. They stood in front of her paintings and saw their own memories reflected back. Their own love and loss made visible. A gallery owner from the city cornered her near the study. I have a space opening up in March. I'd love to feature your work. A full show, not just a few pieces. A collector asked about commissioning a painting of his late wife. Not a portrait from a photograph, he clarified. But the way you do it. The feeling of who she was. By 9 o'clock, Maya's head was spinning. She slipped out onto the terrace, needing air and quiet. The garden stretched out below, lit by soft lights that Daniel had installed along the paths. His mother's roses were dormant for winter, but you could still see the careful structure of the garden she'd built. She heard the door open behind her but didn't turn around. Quite a night, Daniel said, joining her at the railing. I keep waiting to wake up, Maya said. A year ago I was selling my last painting just to buy groceries. Now I have gallery owners fighting over who gets to show my work next. You deserve this, do I? Maya looked at him. I feel like I cheated somehow. Like I took your grief and turned it into my success. Daniel was quiet for a moment, looking out at the gardens. Can I tell you what really happened? Not the story everyone else sees, but the truth? Maya nodded. I was going to sell this house, sign the papers, take the money, and never look back. I was going to bury my parents' memory so deep that it couldn't hurt me anymore. He paused. But then I saw your painting in that gallery window, and something about it made me stop. Made me remember that pain and love aren't separate things. They're tangled up together, and trying to avoid one means losing the other. He turned to face her. You didn't take my grief and turn it into your success. You took my grief and showed me how to transform it, how to remember without drowning. And in the process, you created something that's helping dozens of other people do the same thing. Maya felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I was so angry at the world for so long. Angry that nobody wanted my art. Angry that I couldn't pay rent doing the only thing I knew how to do. Angry that my grandmother died and left me alone. And now I realize I wasn't alone. I was just waiting to find the people who understood what I was trying to say. She laughed through her tears. That sounds so cheesy. It sounds true, Daniel corrected. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the party continue inside through the large windows. Maya could see people moving from room to room, stopping in front of each painting, really looking, really feeling. A young woman stood alone in front of the grandmother's park painting, the original one that had started everything. Daniel had bought it back from the collector who'd purchased it, and it now hung in the entrance hall. A beginning to the whole story. The woman was crying softly, and Maya recognized something in her posture. The weight of carrying grief alone. I should go back in, Maya said. Should or want to? Both, actually. She smiled at Daniel. Thank you. For everything. For seeing something in that painting. For trusting me with your family's story. For giving me a chance when nobody else would. Thank you for painting truth, Daniel replied. For refusing to make art that's easy or trendy or safe. For remembering that the quiet moments are the ones that matter most. Maya went back inside and made her way to the young woman standing in front of the park painting. She didn't say anything at first, just stood beside her looking at her own work like she was seeing it for the first time. It's beautiful, the woman finally said, wiping her eyes. My grandmother and I used to walk in a park just like this. Every Saturday morning. She died 6 months ago, and I feel like I'm forgetting her, like she's slipping away and I can't hold on. Maya's heart broke open. She knew this feeling intimately. You're not forgetting her, Maya said gently. You're just learning a new way to carry her with you. The memories don't disappear. They just change shape. The woman looked at her, really looked, and something passed between them. Understanding. Recognition. The acknowledgement that grief is both universal and deeply personal. Are you the artist? The woman asked. I am. How did you know? How did you capture exactly what it feels like to lose someone and still love them? Maya thought about her grandmother. About standing in this same spot a year ago, desperate and broken. About selling her last painting and thinking she'd reached the end. Because I've been there, she said simply. And I learned that sometimes the things we create to survive become the things that save us. Not just ourselves, but other people too. The woman nodded slowly, turning back to the painting. Thank you for making this. For remembering that loss isn't the end of love. It's just a different chapter. Later that night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet again, Maya walked through the rooms one last time. Her paintings looked different now. Not like her work, but like windows into something larger. Proof that pain could transform into beauty. That grief could become art. That losing everything could somehow lead to finding yourself. She stopped in front of the final painting, the family around the dinner table frozen in a moment of perfect togetherness. She thought about how far she'd come, how many paintings she'd create in the future, how many more stories she'd tell. But mostly, she thought about that desperate morning when she'd wrapped up her last painting and carried it down 4 flights of stairs, how she'd believed she was giving up her grandmother's memory just to survive another week. She hadn't known then that survival was just the beginning. That sometimes you have to let go of one thing to make room for everything else. Sometimes you have to sell your last painting to discover that you were never really empty at all. You were just waiting for the right moment to begin again.